My name is Ryan Chapman. Uh, I'm the founder of Fix Your Funnel. I work that business together with my brother Trent, and then I won't introduce all our staff because they're not on right now. But in today's webinar, what we're going to be talking about is how do we let our business tell us what it needs? And if you got everything figured out, then maybe this will be just reminders and review for you, which I found to be very helpful. But chances are, if you're a typical business owner, you sometimes find yourself a little bit stressed about what should you be doing or not getting results from something you are doing. And so today we're going to be talking about a very simple process and approach that can allow you to be able to know how to be looking at your business. I'm going to real briefly talk about this concept, and then we're going to let Jared show us how we actually implement, because theory is nice, but implementation is better. And so we're going to be getting into that. If you don't know Jared, Jared and his partner Dustin own a company called Marketing Mavens, which has a couple of really great products for Infusionsoft users. Number one is Graphly. At least in my mind, that's number one. But also, and probably equally important if your business utilizes the functions of it, is Parsi. And some really cool stuff that can be done with Parsi. So you want to go and check that out as well. But today's topic, we're going to be talking about how we here at Fix Your Funnel utilize the tool Graphly to be able to visualize data in our company to tell us a story of what is going on and also to tell us what to do. So the first thing, and if you have paper and pencil in front of you, that's great. If you don't, then if you can try and sketch out some notes on the computer or the phone, that's okay too. But ideally, a piece of paper and a pencil or pen would be good for you to have right now. I'm going to walk you through a business that I did a consulting thing with, and we're going to walk through what their process was from making people aware of their business to putting money in their bank account. And this concept we call the yellow brick road. But this is the fundamental understanding you have to have about your business, is how does money flow through it? Because if you understand how money flows through it, then we can now start measuring that, and then we can start learning things from it. And your business will tell you actually what it needs and where to focus and to get growth out of your business or greater profit margins. So here's a typical business. They're using ads to drive people to RSVP. In this case, they attend a dinner, they're given a presentation, and they agree to a $29 appointment. The $29 is highlighted in green because that's money. That's not the point of this business, obviously, but that is used to fund the ads that get people to RSVP, to attend the dinner, and then to agree to the $29 appointment. They got to show up at one appointment where there's an assessment done, and then appointment 2 is when the presentation is done, and then at number 3 they accept the treatment plan, or the whole point of this business, and that's where the money is now into the business. And then there's more to it than this, but we're going to cover just this as a simplified version of understanding what we call the yellow brick road. Now, in your business, you may say, hey, my business is much more complicated than that, Ryan. I've got tangents and trails going all over the place. That might be reality, but the other reality that's also true that you'll be able to discover with the help of what Jared's doing is that probably, and this is just because this is the way that nature works, about 80% of your results are coming through one primary path. Now you may have parallels in that path, but there's a basic system or flow where the money's going in your business, and most of your results are coming through one path. And so we want to focus in on that path, because that path is the primary path and probably is going to tell you the most about what's going on in your business. So what I would like you to do right now, so that you can be able to get the most out of what Jared's going to be showing and teaching you in the next section, as I pass the baton over to him, is I want you to draw out what is the basic flow for your business. Now you'll notice there's probably a lot of little working parts and intricate steps between each one of these blocks that we put out on the screen here. But this is meant to act as a representation of the general flow, not necessarily a complete map of every single process in the entire business. And by chunking it down into about 5 to 7 steps, we're going to be able to then have our business tell us the most information with the most ease of us being able to interpret it. So right now, if you haven't already, start on that. I want you to map out what your business looks like so that we can be able to have you thinking about your own business as we go through the rest of this. because again, you can learn the theory and you'll see somebody else's application, but if you're not thinking about your business, then you kind of waste your own time. So honestly, Jared and I are doing great, and if you don't fix your business, it probably won't hurt us too much. But I would like you to fix, make sure your business is optimized and doing the most it can for you, since you're spending your days doing it anyways. Now, what's so important to know is that each one of these transitions is what we call a leverage point, and there's potential for that to increase profitability and overall revenue in the company by adjusting what's going on at these different leverage points. However, if you try and work on all of them at the same time, you're going to find yourself very frustrated because number one, you have a limited supply of time and money and attention, and so you can't really work on all 5 of them at the same time. It's just physically impossible. And even if you had a team of people, you wouldn't want them all working on all of them at the same time because of what we're going to get into a little bit later, which is each of these sucks up resources. So if you try and optimize all of them, what's going to happen is you have excess resources being spent on something that's really not impacting the bottom line. So we don't want to do that either. Now, in this particular case, we're going to be looking at some numbers. And these numbers were numbers that I gathered from this person. The number to the left is the phone number. The number to the right is a mailing address. And so these are the numbers at each step that they had. There's one that looks a little bit off. That's between attend dinner and agree appointment. This is just because they had not had a good way of tracking some of these numbers, and they added that later. So that's why the numbers are relative. Oh, go back one. All right. So that's why those numbers are a little bit off. But these numbers here, at least to somebody that is familiar with this process of looking at the business as a system, they mean something, and they tell a story. And they help someone, like, for example, myself, to know where should this business actually be paying attention. But
hey,
go ahead.
I'm sorry to interject.
No, interject.
I chatted you in the chat. Yeah, no, I hit you up in the chat. I'm not a multitasker myself, so you might not have seen it. I'm still seeing a white screen. I'm wondering if the other attendees are seeing. I'm seeing the title of the presentation.
Oh no.
So I'm wondering if maybe you've got multiple screens and we're not seeing what you're referring to. I think it's valuable for people to see it.
As soon as I went into the presentation, it totally hit everything.
Now we've got Yosemite.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay. Well, I apologize. At least when you see the replay, you'll be able to see everything in real time. Okay. Well, this will now make everything else make sense. All right. Well, if we're on the same page again, then we'll go ahead and hit it. So these numbers right here were numbers reported by the business. And while these numbers tell a story, this is a snapshot in time. So what it doesn't tell me when I see these numbers is it doesn't tell me what's happened in the past and what is our trajectory. Are we going up? Are we going down? Are we getting better? Are we getting worse? The other thing that's hard about this is this took a lot of effort on the part of the individual who uses Infusionsoft to get these numbers out, because they had to manually go in and look at some reports and look at tags and pull these different numbers together and then try and then relay those back to me. Now, when I look at these numbers, what I found is that the leverage opportunity for this individual was actually, and see, it's really hard to tell when you're just looking at the raw numbers versus the graphs, which is why I like Graphly so much. But the biggest opportunity for these guys was actually to focus on increasing the acceptance of the $29 appointment. And then there was a secondary option, but we wouldn't focus on that until we fixed getting the $29 appointment. So when I understand that the restriction in this process or in this flow is between people attending the dinner and agreeing to the $29 appointment, I understand that was the biggest loss of opportunity that occurred, then it tells me where I need to focus in order to be able to increase the profitability or just the overall flow of money in this business. And so this is relatively simple. You can take a 5th grader and you can show them the chart, and especially once we have Graphly in the picture, you can show it to them and they can point out immediately where the opportunity is. But if we're not looking at these numbers in our business and we're not thinking about our business as a system, it's very difficult for us to then start to systematically improve that business. So the first step for everybody is you're going to map this out. The second step is we got to identify how do we get numbers that will tell us what's happening at each step, so we can start to see a story and we can start to see where is it that we're losing the most opportunity, and then focus in on that. And you'll want to focus in on that and exclude everything else in the business. Now, it doesn't mean you don't do all the other parts. We don't stop ads. We don't stop taking RSVPs or putting on the dinners in this business's case. We still do all that, but we don't try to improve anything except for the thing that's restricting the flow of money in this process. So that's the basic philosophy. Like I said, it's very simple. It's very easy. That's the theory side of it. But now we're going to put the hard part on you, Jared. And that is, we're going to have you show us how do we make this actually applicable where you can actually do it in your own business.
Usually a dashboard, a Graphly dashboard would not be laid out like this, but I've got everything left aligned so I can try and hold your attention versus showing you the whole thing at once. So we're going to kind of take our time. So what I want to show you is what we call a tag funnel report. It's very easy to put together. If I actually just kind of dive into the settings here, all we did was we basically came in and we chose the tags that we wanted to measure, and it's all drag and drop. So we put them in the order of our funnel. So people are first, seller lead, then their listing, and so on. And then we choose a date range of how we want to measure that funnel. Once we've done all that, it returns this really beautiful what's going on. So I'm just going to look at the numbers from left to right. So and I'm going to actually jump down a little bit because it starts to make more sense here as we get further along in the funnel. So looking at the red section here, actually maybe we'll just go stage by stage. So basically what this is saying is that 75% here of the seller leads that we generated will actually convert into listings. And of those listings, 57% of those guys will actually, we'll be able to find buyers for. And then when we do find a buyer for a property, 92% of the time, we're gonna facilitate a transaction. And at least for the time frame that we're measuring, whether it's because we're not measuring long enough or maybe this is really the case, only 9% of those actually get paid or have been paid. So that's what the numbers and percentages mean. So you got the first number, which represents the number of contacts that have made it to that step in the funnel. The first percentage is, hey, from the very top of the funnel, what percent of people get this far in my funnel? And then, of course, the last percent is kind of the one I gave the example of, but it's showing you from stage to stage. The previous stage make it here and that. Does that make sense, Ryan?
Yeah, Jared, let me interject and share with you guys how I use these numbers. So this is the snapshot type of number. It's over a period of time, but it's not giving me necessarily historical. And that's okay, because really I want to look at what's current in terms of making decisions on where I focus. But I'm not I would like historical. I think you're going to get into that in just a little bit and some more data that you can extract with Graphly. But this right here, by looking at that third number, the third number is the one that we really want to pay attention to when we're trying to determine how things are moving from stage to stage. And being able to see this as a percentage can be helpful if all those numbers are like tags versus dollar amounts or something like that. We have to just make sure that whatever we're measuring from stage to stage, the number that we pick out is a number that's going to be the same across all the stages, so we can get some sort of relative idea of how things are going. Mm-hmm. And now, so as we're looking here, we say, okay, we got 75% on the first one, 57%, 92%, and then 9%. Again, this is where we can take a third grader or fourth grader, we can bring him in and say, okay, which of these steps looks like it's got the biggest problems? And what would they point to? They would point to 9%, right? They would say, absolutely, there's a real problem on getting paid. Now, this is especially alarming because that's where the money is, right? And this is the important part to realize. what we see a lot, and I see this a ton, especially with newer marketers or newer business owners that are maybe getting introduced to new ways of marketing, is there's a real temptation, and honestly, a lot of the gurus or the tool suppliers like to focus you in on this to over optimize for a particular stage. So from generate a lead to convert to a listing, they're going to focus in on that, and then they're going to only look at that. And that's what they talk about at conferences. That's what they talk about at the bar. That's what they talk about at lunch. As they're talking about these optimized things, like it might be your click-through rate or your cost per lead or whatever. Like today I did a user group meeting for some Infusionsoft users here in Tucson where I live. And a guy was telling us about his business, and he spent, when he started giving his numbers, the number he knew was cost per lead. But I said, well, what's your cost per customer? Like, customer acquisition. He goes, I don't know that off the top of my head. But he knew the cost per lead. This is a kind of a symptom of this over-optimization that we get for a particular stage without looking to say, what's actually controlling the flow of money into my bank account? Now, with this chart right here, we get a sense for what it could be. Now, there's another layer of information that you got to apply to this. You can't just look at the percentages and say, oh, okay, it's 9% because that's the lowest, although that's a first indicator that it could be. The other thing is you have to be aware of what's kind of the industry standard, because that can give you a relative reality check, right? So if the number of leads to listings is, let's say that was 9%, we might say, okay, well, what's fairly typical out there? Because there's the law of diminishing returns, right? So fairly typical of converting from seller lead to listing, let's say that it was 20% and we're getting 9%, then we're really like at half of what we should expect to just be on par with what everybody else is. So that relative number based on what we expect, based on what we're hearing from the rest of the market, kind of gives us a reference point. So we can't go off straight percentages. We have to kind of use the reference of what's accepted to be able to then, change that number, so to speak, or give it weight so that we know, okay, is this percentage in the acceptable range, or is this below it, or is this above it? And then that helps us to be able to determine where's the biggest opportunity in this process. So if all things stayed the same in this business, and we could change the number of times we got paid from what it is right here is 1 out of 11 to 2 out of 11, we would essentially double that business. But because we looked at all the numbers, we could see that it's a lot less effort to get paid on one more file than it is to get 28 more leads. And so it's not even so much that we're, if we're trying to double a business, we just want to look at where is the biggest leverage point. And that's why, eventually you guys saw the little levers on those in between steps. If we use a chart just like this one, so if you just got Graphly and all you did was this chart right here, this would change your business. Because just this chart alone, if you just took like whatever, how long does it take to set up something like this, Jared?
3 minutes or less to create a funnel chart like that.
And because this is a live chart based off of the changing data in your Infusionsoft, if you just set up this chart will change your business. Because if you just looked at this every day and then said, okay, where do I need to be focusing on improving my business? And you just stayed focused on that area that needed the most improvement, that would yield the best return for you, you would be 99% further than any of your competition, because your competition isn't thinking that way for the most part. They might be thinking, they maybe heard the concept of focus on the one thing or whatever, but they really don't have a methodology for being able to visually see where is that one thing I should be focusing on. So just this chart alone, like I know, Jared, you're going to show us even more data that will help us to make intelligent decisions. But if you just did this, I'd be so thrilled for you, because this is going to tell you exactly where to focus, and it'll help you to hear all sorts of sales pitches, hear all sorts of new ideas, and not be pulled to and fro by every wind of doctrine, but be able to focus on that one thing that's actually going to make a difference in your business at this point in time. So sorry for interrupting, but I wanted to really highlight that because this is so critical, just this one chart.
No, that's great. I appreciate that. And I want to circle back to something you said, the whole idea behind a funnel, for me, a funnel is never done. You don't build it and walk away from it. It's always looking at measuring and tweaking, and the order in which you decide what to tweak, goes back to what Ryan was saying about, every funnel, every system having some sort of constraint, and there only ever is a single constraint at one time. And so maybe, if we had fixed the getting paid to where now you're getting 2 or 3 of those flowing through, then what may happen is another constraint up higher might present itself. That's usually what seems to occur. And so then we pull out, we're able to analyze, look at maybe what's causing that, try some new things. And Ryan, you talked about that, what about over time, and how do you do that? And when you're trying to make changes and then measure those changes. So what we often see, and it's a beautiful thing, like I've been able to look in customer accounts and see walls of these funnel charts, because they'll actually have these different date ranges for year to date, month to date, comparing the previous month to the next one.
Yes.
And so they'll have them lined up side by side to say, okay, we know that we implemented this onboarding sequence, or we implemented this, this conversion or this sales process on this date. Let's measure from that point moving forward and look at the two side by side, what we were doing, what we weren't doing.
Yes, and being able to see that picture of the difference. Yeah. See,
and you talked about over optimizing. What happens if the very first thing you try fails? Well, if you weren't measuring it, you would just keep, basically hammering the same square peg through a round hole, and because the guru told you that was what would help you grow your business. And so it's important anytime you do make
a change.
Compare
Yeah.
What was the exactly.
But and look, we've said a few things that were semi-derogatory towards the whole guru concept. I have gurus that I listen to as well. But the thing is you always have to take that information you're getting and then measure your application of it, because more frequently than not, when we have someone that really knows what they're talking about and they're giving us some guidance and we don't get the result that they maybe get or that they led us to believe we should get, I've seen more frequently than not, there's some misapplication or misunderstanding of the information they're presenting us with. And so a measurement tool helps you to know, am I getting it right? And then if you're not getting it right, because your results are telling you that, you can take that back to the guru and say, here's what's happening, here's my numbers. And a real expert, a real guru that really knows what they're talking about is now going to be able to actually help you, because you have real data to work with, and you can show them the charts. You say, well, here's what we did on this date, and here's what happened afterwards. And they'll know how to fix it like that if you have a real guru. But frequently, we don't have that data. We just go and say, hey, your thing doesn't work, or I'm not getting the same results as you, and nobody can help us with that. That would be like going to a doctor and saying, is my bone broken? He's like, well, we got to take an x-ray. So I don't have x-rays. Well, the doctor can't do much for us until they get the data.
No, no, you can't. So this shows you the data. Now, obviously, looking at this, what we're doing is it is one big collective view. What I recommend from here, what's awesome is you can copy this guy, and I'm just going to do that real quick, and then I'm going to rename it, because the question I would pose is, are all leads created equal? No, they are not. If we're generating seller leads, maybe we're doing it from Zillow, maybe we're doing it from Realtor.com, Trulia, an IDX broker, whatever it is, we better be measuring how each source converts, because I would guarantee that if you measure it broken down by source, no two sources will have the exact same conversion. They might be close, but no two sources will ever have the exact same conversion.
This is the source of another mistake a lot of us make, which is because of and this is called local optimization. If you guys want to know the technical term, look it up and learn more about it. But when the only data we have is data relative to that one step, then we do the best we can, which is we make decisions off the data that we have, right? And so if the data that I have is cost per lead, and I've got one source that's producing leads at $1 and another source that's producing at $20, what's the chances I'm going to keep running the lead source that produces a $20 lead versus a $1 lead? They're not good, are they? I'm going to choose to go with the $1 lead, most likely, because I don't know anymore to be able to make a decision. But it very well could be that the $1 leads don't even convert at all, and the $20 leads convert and produce massive profit for me. But without something like what Jared's talking about, I can't set the lead source to be able to change my view of what my results are. Like, try and go do this without Graphly and tell me how it goes for you. And I don't want it to, Jared, to sound like I'm just like pumping Graphly. It really solves the problem.
Yeah, it does. It does. I mean, and that was the example I had jotted down is, you've got one lead source that maybe you're pumping $500 into, it's converting at 1%, and forget the whole even cost per lead, just your total spend, and somewhere else you're only putting $100 in because someone told you, the real estate leads over there aren't as good, but it's converting at 5%. Like, oh baby, like I just uncovered a hidden treasure. Like, let's take the $500 that's being spent on a total underperforming lead source, and we can allocate that to one of our top performing lead sources, and literally, like, overnight we double or triple our lead generation.
And that's not, you didn't have to change anything else in the business, because you actually identified where the opportunity was in the business by letting the business, and we kind of alluded to this in the title, but I like this metaphor for me to use, and hopefully you'll be able to use it as well, which is your business is a living entity, and as a living entity, it wants to grow. And if you don't let it grow, then it sucks the life, money, and energy out of you. But if you let it grow, it rewards you richly. And if you listen to it, and this is how you listen to it, by the way, is you got to see the data and what it's telling, the story that it's telling you. The business wants you to know how to make it grow. And so just using this one thing that you just talked about, Jared, of looking at, figuring out what our pathway to profit is, and then comparing it by lead source to see which one's actually producing results for us, that is a very simple approach to being able to maximize what you're doing.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, if you like that one, there's one that is like its twin brother that I want to show off real quick. Just before I do that, though, to the lead source to just be pulling Zillow, and apparently there are no contacts in our sandbox with Zillow as a lead source. So that's
don't spend any more money on Zillow then. That's the moral of this story.
Yeah, stop there. So, all right. So the next days between tags, and I've reloaded the exact same tags that we chose for our funnel.
Hey, for our screen recording, it's not updating your screen. Did you move up so that you're showing the next level?
I did.
Okay, now it's showing.
Do you not see it?
I see it now.
Maybe a little bit of a lag there?
Yeah, a little bit of lag. You cut in and out occasionally.
I'll keep that in mind as we're going here, not to move too quickly before you see what's on my screen. But basically what I've done is I've come in and I've created tag pairs. So I said, okay, from I call it lead to listing, but from the seller lead we converted it to a listing. How long does that take? From being a listing to finding a buyer, how long does that take? So what we're measuring here down below is, on average, how long does it take us to get from step to step within our funnel? Because here's the thing, a bottleneck, a constraint, son of a gun, whatever you refer to them as, don't always present themselves as just low conversion, like a low percent.
It could be time. Yeah.
The bottleneck is the time, right?
Yeah.
And so if you know that, hey, this should be maybe 5 days, this should be 5 days, and these if we're talking really like finding a buyer, anyway, if it's like 5, and then this should be 1 and this should be 2, and I wish there was a way in a webinar that we could show everyone on the call all at once their numbers with just these 2 things, because you'd likely be shocked. But this one really shocks people because they're like, okay, that process is supposed to take 2 days, and I have no idea why we're almost at 7. And so
here's the significance of this to me is you have a limited amount of capital that you're investing into marketing, whether you realize it or not. That's the case, and that marketing dollar is trapped in this process until you get paid, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what it is it's cash flow. I mean, for any business, but particularly small businesses who don't have, $1 million loans out where they get money in the bank to tap into and kind of be able to float stuff. If your money's tied up, let's use the exact same example. We're looking at this collectively. These are all of our lead sources jumbled into the single chart. But certainly, if you have 3 main lead sources or 4 main lead sources, you would want to see your, pipeline time frame or whatever you want to label this for Zillow. You'd want to see one for Realtor.com. You'd want to see one for Trulia. We talked about earlier how they would never have the same conversion, but let's pretend for a moment they do. Let's pretend all those things convert at the exact same thing. So we don't necessarily, need to say, hey, we should pour more money here or there because they're all converting at the same percentage. But what if one of these took 45 days to close on a listing, one took 60 days, and one took 90 days? Well, we ought to start, in that case, investing more in the Zillow leads, for example, that only take 45 days to get our money back, because then we can rinse and repeat that cycle of, spend, acquire a lead, sell the lead, and then do it again. We fit a lot more cycles in let's say a year's time than if we're tying up our money in leads that take 90 days to close. So this one is incredibly important to see. It's great to have a global view like what we're looking at, but then you'd want to go ahead and duplicate that maybe 3 or 4 times, whatever your core lead sources are, and measure by lead source so that you know which ones are taking longer than others. And just because one is taking longer than another doesn't necessarily mean that you gotta drop it all together. Maybe there's something about that type of lead that does take them longer. Maybe there's something additional. If you've segmented them as they come in, they're this type of lead, maybe there's an extra step or two, another text message or email communication or webinar or survey or something you can do to speed up that process for those types of leads. But unless you're breaking it out at a more granular level, you'll never know, and you'll just be collectively
okay.
Looking at it.
So now this is why I don't want you guys just to get Graphly without thinking about the whole strategy and context and approach that we're talking about of identifying the constraint first, because one of the things that happens when you start getting all this data is you'll start to identify 30 different ways you could improve your business, right, Jared? It's very easy to get a long list and then be overwhelmed because you're like, oh, I got to do all these things there's all this opportunity. And that's part of the curse of being an entrepreneur, if you consider yourself one, is that you see money. You see money that hasn't been turned into money yet. You see it in its, ethereal form, and you have to learn to say no to things. And the whole point of this pathway to profit or yellow brick road, and then identifying the constraint, the thing that's really controlling the flow of profit and will yield the biggest return for its attention on it, is so that you can say, okay, yes, there's 30 different ways I could make more money in the business just based off of these 2 charts, these 2 types of charts alone, right? And I see there's another stage below where you're going to add even more opportunity to see what's going on. But we really got to make sure we're focused in on the one thing that is limiting profit the most in the system, and we only focus on that first. So get your list of 30 different things that can be done, but then you got to use the system of looking at what is the constraint to prioritize those. And it's fantastic to have 30 things on your list. It's way better to have 30 than 0. But then prioritize those so you're not trying to do all of them. You're not jumping all over the place. You have a process for being able to focus in on one thing, improve that, and then take the next step. That discipline alone will set you apart. That discipline alone will ensure that you'll have consistent success. That one thing alone will ensure that you have consistent growth in your business, if that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, and that's really why we started the call off with wanting you to identify your own yellow brick road, your own pathway to profit. Because if we go to inside Infusionsoft settings and go to marketing, probably have 20 or 30 or more campaigns. You should not jump into Graphly and build out a chart for every campaign. What is your pathway to profit? Let's look at that first.
Okay, so
maybe if we identify, holy cow, this one step in our process and our pathway to profit has issues, maybe there's a campaign or two that are involved in that step where we need to extrapolate further data to analyze what changes need to be made. But if you just did this for just your pathway to profit, it will change your business.
Okay, so just so that I can make sure the rubber's hitting the road for people, if they've like laid out their pathway to profit, it looks as though you're saying just to get these two charts, we need to have they entered this phase and they left this phase tags being applied.
Okay, so that opens a whole nother conversation about the difference between historical tags and status tags. We certainly have reports where if you're wanting to see where someone is at right now and not where they've come from or where they've been, those are status.
Okay, you cut out, but
these are the. Am I cutting out?
You did cut out, but if you can briefly just then walk us through. Like a status tag is something that happens when that person enters there. Are you applying then a historical tag at the exact same time, but the status tag you're removing?
Yep, exactly. So for these particular, again, tags, they get date and time stamped. That's what gives.
That's what gives them the historical perspective.
The historical perspective. So we want to make sure that we're using tags that will always stay on the contact record. If you have a process that requires you to be able to identify, hey, they just have this one tag, then you might be doing what Ryan's saying, where every time they move to the next stage, you're applying two tags and removing the previous one. So you're always applying a historical tag and a new status tag and removing the previous status tag.
Now you might have only one of those tags, being a trigger for something, but you're going to apply both. That way you can get two pictures. One is your historical one. So you're using your historical tags to be able to look at this pathway to profit chart at the top. Then you're using the historical and the current stage, or the difference between the two historicals for the days between stages. Is that right?
Yes.
And then if I wanted to see how many people I have in each stage of my business on the pathway to profit, I would use my current tag.
We've got other reports that showcase that really well. So
okay, great.
Pie charts.
Okay, so hopefully, absolutely. If that doesn't make sense to you, we want you to go ahead and make sure you're taking notes of these questions. Again, during the Claim Your Life Back event in September, Jared's going to be there. And we're going to be helping you to get this done. If you can't follow along and get this done, hopefully you can follow along. That's the goal, is you follow and get this done. If you haven't, when you get to the Claim Your Life Back, that's like our first priority for you, is to make sure that we get you set up so that you're able to see these numbers, because that's going to be necessary for us to know what we're going to be drilling in and helping you focus on fixing in the business, so to speak, so that you can actually have success. Because the first picture is you got to see what's going on. So that's why we're doing this webinar now. If you do have questions that come up, can they message you or message me? What would be good? I know we're going to go into more, but I want them to be thinking about that at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. We just integrated Intercom on our website a few weeks ago. So if you just go to graphly.io, you can start a chat with us. We're here pretty much every weekday 8 to 5. So
awesome. Okay, so make sure you get this down, because before you show up, if you're coming to Claim Your Life Back, which of course is a no-brainer for anybody that has a business that they're trying to grow, but if you're coming, we want you to have done this before you get there. So get the help from Jared to know how to set this stuff up if you need it. If you want to ask us, you can ask us for help too. But what we want you to do is have your pathway to profit laid out. Have a basic chart that's showing it. Even if you have 20 different paths, let's get the biggest one and get that at least mapped out so we can see some opportunity. If you get a chance to map out some of the others, that's okay too. But we want to kind of get this laid out so we can be able to see what's going on in the business. Because if we're going to spend 3 days together, I don't want to be wasting it on something that's not going to produce results, right?
Yeah, definitely not. Well, Ryan, you told me to put together a handful of reports that would help guide people and help them make the decision on what to do next in their business.
Yeah.
I did put together a handful. I know we're at like 10 till, so I don't know if we want to rapid fire through these last few or if we want
Yeah,
to
let's
dive
let's
into
go
it
through
another
those. And
day. But
before we do, if you don't already have Graphly, how does somebody get started with Graphly? Because I did it so long ago, I don't even know the process, Jared. Do you have like a free trial, or
um,
what do you recommend people do?
yeah, we have a free trial. So I'll tell you what, I'll pull up. I've got a slide on it, but our homepage is craftly.io. There's a red button, sign up free. You can try it out for
Okay,
14 days, no credit card, no risk.
so
So
let's just do that. Get this. I honestly, I don't even know how much you guys charge because I know it's not enough for me to even think about because just being able to see this stuff has been so critical. In fact, it goes back to several years ago. Jared, Dustin, and I were sitting chatting. I'm like, you guys got to come out with something, which ended up being Graph. I know you guys had a previous version, but I'm like, this is so critical for helping people that use Infusionsoft to
yeah.
be able to really get the most out of what's in their Infusionsoft database because there's no other way you're getting this kind of information. Okay, let's go down and see some of these other reports. I'm
Cool.
super excited to see
Awesome.
what
So
else came together.
the next one is value per lead, value per customer. You kind of brought this up, lead. And I'm not saying you should ignore either of those, especially not the per click side. They're all valuable, but the deeper we go, the more valuable the data becomes. And so these two numbers in the top right are averages over the entire window of time that we're looking at here. So on the left, you've got your value sandbox account. I wouldn't expect it normally to fluctuate as much as we're seeing here. But what does this tell me? So $70.54, that is our value per customer. That means we can legitimately spend $70.54 to acquire a customer for free because we essentially break even. So, and we do
Okay,
better than break even
so
because, we
this
build a
is
list of leads, we got a list of customers,
is this
and then we
based
can
off
monetize
of
that relationship.
is this based off of the initial purchase then?
It can be. It's totally based on in the settings you can choose.
Okay.
It's kind of a time window.
Oh,
So
so
maybe you're just
can you
looking
say
at
like
one
the
day,
first
or maybe
day?
looking at the first 7 days.
Okay, great.
Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
fantastic. That's awesome. I'm not even using that one. I need to use it. Um, and that's the total amount that they're spending in whatever time frame you're saying at the
Whatever
beginning
time
of
frame.
their being a customer with you.
Yeah. It's whatever you define as your front end. So whether that front end is
Right.
the very same day they purchase, or maybe it's the first 3 days because you have an
So
upsell program that is because they're
in my case, I'm doing a $1 trial. So it's going to be, I'm going to say 31 days. So that I get the first month in there because that's going to give me a picture of what did they spend the first month.
okay. Now I'm recording, Ryan. All right. So again, we're looking at our top 20% of our customers, and Graphly's returning and showing us here are the top 5 lead sources that produce your very best customers. And how did we decide they're our very best customers? Recency, meaning they bought recently with us. Frequency, meaning that they transact often. They haven't just done one purchase, but 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. And monetary value, what is the dollar figure behind those transactions? So we run some pretty cool calculations joining those 3 factors to return to sift and filter and sort through your database and essentially return to you and say, here are your 20 best customers that probably result in 80% of your revenue. And here are the top 5 lead sources. So maybe you want to go back to those lead sources. Here are the top 5 tags that they all share amongst them. So maybe there's a certain webinar that when people go through, it causes them to be a great customer. Maybe there's a certain onboarding sequence that turns them into great customers. But you'll find that if you tag for different scenarios, you'll start to see stories being told of, so we need to get more people through said process where we tag that they've been through that process, and it helps create and turn them into our best types of customers. Now, that's not all. That's not it. The last thing that I want to show you on this is that you can check this box and then trigger some automation in Infusionsoft. For now, what I would be happy with doing is simply applying a tag, and then I would go into my Infusionsoft account. I would look up, do a contact search for that tag.
export it, and then I would upload it to Facebook and create a lookalike audience and begin pulling in prospects that match my very best customers. So, none of this is rocket science. At times it feels magical, especially when you check your bank account once you've put some of this in place, but it's not rocket science. We've made it stupid simple for any average Joe or Jane running any business in any industry for any length of time to be able to understand what's working in his or her business and what's not, what to work on next, what to tweak, what they can spend versus what they can't, how to go find more of his or her very best customers. And today, and I blitzed through these last three fast, I didn't get to spend the time that I wanted to on them, but we just covered 5 reports. That's it, 5 reports. We have a library of over 50 report templates, and we're working on scoping, developing, testing another 15 right now, with a bunch more ideas backloaded behind that. This is just 5 reports that would literally change your business. So they will tell you the stories you need to hear, that you need to be told to lead, guide, grow, and scale your business with confidence. So I would invite you to step out of the dark and into the light, to look at the numbers and let the numbers tell you what to do. And where do you go to get the numbers? If you've used Infusionsoft for any length of time, they're not there. That's why we built Graphly. And I'd invite everyone here to create a free trial, no credit card required, no risk. Just go to graphly.io and sign up for the free trial, take it for a test drive, and see what it'll do for you. Perhaps you'll get that dream car after all. So thanks so much, guys and gals, for hanging out. I hope more than anything that not only will you give Graphly an opportunity to serve you, but that you recognize the enormous power that you have as a marketer, as an entrepreneur, when you have the numbers, when you're able to look at the numbers, when you're able to see the numbers, and you're able to make simple decisions based on those numbers. We really are in the arithmetic game. And whether you aced math in school or completely flunked, Graphly will do the heavy lifting for you. And I know we had planned on doing an open Q&A. I think we're having technical difficulties. I'm actually not even quite sure that the attendees can hear me right now. One guy said yes, but the other ones are not responding. And so I don't know if he was saying yes to a previous question or not. But I just want to say a huge thank you. I hope that you understood today. I hope that you have hope. I know it's easy to get discouraged. I hope that what I shared gave you hope, that you can see that, hey, everyone likes to say how hard business is, and it certainly can be, but it can also be easy when you look at the numbers. And so I hope you got value out of our conversation today. Hopefully I'll get to meet some of you or a lot of you out at our Claim Your Life Back 3 event. I'm really looking forward to it. Webinars are great, but belly to belly conversations, diving into your business is really what I love. I'm passionate about that. Did that for well over a decade, and enjoy the opportunity I get anytime I can to talk about someone else's business. Just inject myself, ask questions, give feedback, and see what we can do to help you grow. So everybody, I'm out of here. Jared Morris with Graphly. Create a free trial, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.